Hi everyone, my name is CK Burch and this is my Geek review of Revival by Stephen King. Now, for those of you who are constant readers, you may or may not have come to the conclusion that Uncle Steve has sort of lost his drive in recent years. And I don't mean necessarily drive for writing. The man churns out books quicker than anybody save James Patterson, and James Patterson basically writes books through other people and then just puts his name on top of it and takes all the credit for it. And, well, fuck him, basically. Fuck James Patterson. Um, but Stephen King has, in recent years, with some of his novels, has kind of started to show similar tropes and themes and things that he does. He's very blatant with his foreshadowing. He's not very subtle in that regard. When it comes to depictions of certain groups that he doesn't get along with, like, conservatives or Christian folk, stuff like that, like the ultra-conservative Christians, mind you, not like the religious, like the semi-religious types or the moderate conservative. I'm talking about ultra-conservative Christians. When it comes to his depictions in books of certain people, he's a little bit on the rusty side. He kind of shows his political leanings a little bit too much. He's had a tendency to pull out his soapbox, and so for me, as someone who's read his works for a very long time, I've kind of lost, shall we say, the immediate drive and ambition to go out and get a new book by him when it is in fact, like release, like day one release. I think the last one of his that I went out and got day one release was Doctor Sleep. But I didn't. I still have yet to finish that book. I'm going to go with 90% of Stephen King's books, including the Richard Bachman ones. But there's always a few in there where I don't like it so much. I'm going to go The Regulators for one. I'm not a big fan of The Regulators. I'm not a big fan of Cell, and I'm not a big fan of Doctor Sleep. As much as I enjoyed the idea of Danny Torrance getting a spotlight in his later years and seeing what happened to him after The Shining, the book didn't really have very much drive, and I didn't feel like it was going anywhere. So, through a combination of kind of feeling like, some lackluster writing in years and my own inability to find time to sit down and actually read books, I actually have not read his two most recent releases, which is The Wind Through the Keyhole and Mr. Mercedes. Now, Wind Through the Keyhole is kind of like a mid-quill in the Dark Tower series, and as much as I love the Dark Tower series, I've read the series through once, and I really did not feel like reading through the series again just to kind of catch up to read this installment. I've been told that you don't necessarily have to, but I've got a terrible memory when it comes to something I read once upon a time. I read it, I enjoyed it, but the details never truly absorb into my brain and stick with me unless I read through it multiple times. Even Bag of Bones, which is my personal favorite King novel, I will go back and reread it, and I'll still find a few details that I had forgotten about in the intervening time between reads. I think I've read the book a grand total of 3 times. So that being said, and then Mr. Mercedes came out, and that was after Doctor Sleep, and I hadn't finished Doctor Sleep, so I'm like, if I haven't finished Doctor Sleep, I'm not going to go out and get his new one. This brings us to Revival. Revival, I happened to be in Barnes and Noble. I saw it was out. I saw how lean it was. It's 400 pages, and for a Stephen King novel, that's really slim. So I thought, fuck it, I can sit down and I can read a 400-page book, especially a Stephen King novel. Picked it up off the shelves, and I'm very glad I did, because this is his best book in a long time. And by best, I mean it's his most visceral, it's his most lean, it's his most, gripping, suck you in kind of writing that I've seen from him in a long time, and it made me very happy that I went out on the limb and I actually purchased this book. So, long story short, the story of Revival is about Jamie Morton, and the story is told from his first-person perspective, starting when he's about 6 years old all the way up until present day, which puts him about 62. It's a story of him and his and the way that his life crosses paths with Pastor Dan Jacobs, who undergoes many, shall we say, transformations throughout his life. By the way, if I haven't said it yet, spoilers abound, but I am not going to completely spoil everything. Because this is one of those books where I really do truly feel like most of my Geek reviews, I'm reviewing it and I'm talking to you as if you have seen it already for yourself. In this one, there will be some spoilers. However, I will not be truly going into full spoiler territory, so that there are some surprises, so that you do have an incentive to go out and read this book, because I really feel like you should. So Jamie Morton is a 6-year-old boy at the beginning of the book. He meets Pastor Dan Jacobs. He's young. He's the new pastor in town, small town sort of thing. His wife is really attractive. His son is like 2 and gets along with everybody. But then there's a horrific accident, and Pastor Dan's wife and son are brutally murdered in a vicious roadside accident, which was nobody's fault, but it just happened, and it causes Pastor Jacobs to lose his faith. Now, Jamie Morton, as our narrator, who, as it turns out, proves to be a slightly unreliable narrator, not completely unreliable, but slightly unreliable, as there are gaps in his memory in regards to his doings with Pastor Dan. But one of the things that he mentions to us very early on about Pastor Dan is that Pastor Dan is a fan of science, specifically electricity. And he goes to great pains to let us know that Pastor Dan is not just like a student of electricity. He's obsessed with electricity to the point that he makes his own gadgets and devices, and he's kind of an inventor. Now this sticks with Jamie, and so the whole incident involving Pastor Dan, I keep calling him Pastor Jacobs. It's Pastor Dan and Jamie Morton, Pastor Dan. Those of you who've ever grown up in church, you always know your pastor's name is Pastor Dan. First name, not last name. Pastor Dan. So Pastor Dan gets booted out of the church because he gives a great, terrible sermon. It's literally called the terrible sermon, in which he basically renounces his faith, calls God a big sham, and ends up leaving town. Now, over the course of the next, 50, 60 years, Jamie and Pastor Dan intertwine. Their fates cross. Their paths seem to be on parallel tracks for the most part, crisscrossing here and there. But what's very interesting is that Jamie, in the story, as the narrator, tells what he needs to tell. Now, one of the things that I've noticed about Stephen King and his writing is that he's very detailed, and that he gives you a lot of information. Sometimes, in novels like Duma Key, there's a lot of build-up in order for you to really, truly understand the impact of certain events when they happen in the novel. Now, with Revival, Jamie tells us about his life, but he doesn't go incredibly in-depth. There are certain moments that he stops and focuses on, and then he moves on, and then he'll tell us about how he went on, he was a rhythm guitarist for many, many, many years. He got a drug addiction. He picked up, coke, and then heroin, and then, next thing you know, he's a complete and total junkie. And so the book hopscotches through various points in his life. And while we stop on particular moments that are vital and important to the story, I never felt like we were getting superfluous information. I felt that we were getting a lot of information that was very pertinent to the story, and that it comes into play later on in the book as well. It's not just it's like a series of snapshots with a loose narrative connected between said snapshots in order to further the story along. So there is this continual sense of things happening as they happen, which makes you think, okay, right now, here in this moment, this may or may not be a significant event. Like, you as a reader might be thinking, well, why am I reading about this right now? Why is this part important? Even though it may not be like right in front of you as a reader as to this is important. It's back there. You can sense it, you can feel it. And then later on, as the story comes closer and closer to its conclusions, it becomes more and more apparent that these little snapshots have been building to create a much larger picture, a very, very frightening picture, as Pastor Dan, not to throw too many spoilers out there, is starting to become something of a mad scientist. Now, when I saw the title of the book, Revival, when I saw that, and with his Pastor Dan's predilection towards electricity, I immediately started thinking about Uncle Steve's other novel about revival, which was Pet Cemetery, and I started to draw correlations between that, and then this, and then Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So my guess throughout the whole of the book was that he was trying to bring his wife and son back from the dead. He was trying to find a way to get this electricity that he's been working with to bring his wife and son back from the dead. Because you see, the thing with Pastor Dan is that he goes on the road and creates this show. It's a complete and total like carnival show in which he's a faith healer. He uses the power of God to heal people, but he's actually using these special electronic equipment that he has created, harnessing what he calls secret electricity. It's a power source that, throughout the entirety of the novel, Pastor Dan is after. And so for the whole of the novel, the more we learn about what Pastor Dan is trying to do, I had it very, very clear in my head. I was like, he's going to try and bring his wife and son back from the dead. But, like, after so many years, decay, rot, there could be only bones left over. So I couldn't figure it out. The answer, truthfully, is much more sinister and frightening than that. And that is one of the things that I loved about the book, was that it continually kept me guessing. I did not see the ending coming. When the final curtain was pulled back to reveal the great tableau of what King was writing and what Pastor Dan was truly trying to do, it really kind of caught me off guard, and I was like, oh my god, this is intense, this is frightening, and I can't believe I had no idea that this was coming. I really want to read the book again and go and look and see if I can find any clues, because honestly, it came completely out of left field in the best way possible. And I didn't see it coming, and I was very happy for that, because, again, Stephen King has that hard foreshadowing in which he'll drop lines like, oh, and that was the last time I ever saw her. But, you know, it's like, you know, it's like in Doomakey, the main character is talking about his daughter, and then he drops a line about how, like, that was the last time I saw her alive, but then he continues to go on and he has conversations with her over the phone, so we know that she's going to die. So that kind of hard foreshadowing, rather than allowing the impact of the suddenness of a moment to really smack the reader across the face, I feel kind of dulls down some of King's writing. In this, the most foreshadowing we get is that Jamie, as the narrator, talks about, if only I had known what was going to come, maybe I would have done something different. Or, you know, like, I wish that none of this was real, but I know better. So it hints at the horrors that are coming, rather than actually giving you that hard foreshadowing. And it's it's like a rope pulling you along, very much so. If any flaws, I have to say, is that we are dealing with a faith healer. We are dealing with a man who has clearly been jilted by God. So King's portrayal of Pastor Dan just becomes borderline stereotypical of that conservative Christian stereotype that I was telling you about before, how he has that tendency to balloon and exaggerate his own personal views on how he feels about the hardcore right wing. But for the most part, that is when Pastor Dan is in showmanship mode. When Pastor Dan, just Danny Jacobs, is there talking to Jamie Morton, and he's lucid, and he's just being a man talking face to face. The biggest strength about this book is that Pastor Dan is our villain, but he is not really at the same time. He's a guy who you know is all there, and he's got something going on, and you don't want to trust him, you don't want to feel like he is a good guy, but at the same time, he's very well written, he's very likable, and he's very genuine. So is Jamie, even though Jamie kind of has his moments of assholishness. I feel like one of the complaints that I heard about this novel was that the main character is not very present in this story. Um, I really truly disagree with that. Jamie Morton is the lens of the camera. He is very present in this story, and one of the things that I really truly appreciated about this narrative is that Jamie is there for specific instances, and he's there at the beginning, and he's there at the end, and everything in between, whether he is literally there for something that happens with Pastor Dan, or he goes and does research on it. This is him telling the story of something that happened. So the book is not necessarily about Jamie, it is about Pastor Dan. However, as a main character, as a narrator, as a storyteller, Jamie is very present in the novel, and I feel like um, is an integral part of the story. Like Dan, Pastor Dan, very much believes this as well, as he keeps noting that his paths keep crossing with Jamie's, and he believes that they are destined to end this journey together. It's it's a very interesting tale, musing on fate, on the afterlife, on responsibility. It's just a very well written, driving book. And again, it's lean, it's visceral, and it hammer and it speeds home. I swear to God, I read that last 100 pages in one sitting. Could not put it down because it was just at that point in time where it was building and building and building. And again, everything that happens to Jamie is an integral snapshot in the grand puzzle of everything that is being put together, and it all comes together at the end, and everything matters at the very end. Everything matters at the very end. And this is a book that caught me off guard, and it's a book that left me haunted on the final page. I really, truly enjoyed it in a way that I was not expecting to. I went in with admittedly low expectations because I personally haven't really had a lot of time to read, and after Dr. Sleep, I was just kind of tired of the whole like stacking of information in order to build up to things that you needed to know. And part of me shouldn't complain in that regard because I am a writer myself and I have done the same thing before. But I try very much not to. I try. So so this book, Revival, if you want a good, it's not going to be, I won't say it's 100% terrifying or scary. It's definitely creepy. It will get under your skin. It is disturbing. Like, it is very disturbing in places. And it's like Stephen King went out to the garage and tuned up his engine, and this is him revving it for the first time in years and getting ready to go out and peel some pavement. I highly recommend Revival. It gets an 8 out of 10 for me. It's not a book of literature. It's not, if we're gauging like Lisi's story is a 10 and then The Regulators is a 1, this is definitely an 8 on that scale. This is one of his best concise works, especially, in his post-accident writings. So I highly recommend that you go get it. Thank you for watching. I tried to be, I'm very concise with this one. Very concise. I kept it. I'm currently at under 20 minutes, and I'm going to leave it there. Thank you again so much for watching this review. Click some of the links below. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out the California Kings Gaming channel that I run with my brothers. Brother Casey, who is also a constant reader. I'm trying to get him to read this novel as well, so hopefully he'll be watching this and he'll be, kind of convinced to check it out. Now, again, most of the novel I have left out of spoiler territory, so that you can really truly see just how crazy insane that this book can get. But anyways, thank you again so much for watching. This is CK Burch. This has been my geek review of Revival by Stephen King. Thank you for watching.